mentioned equality, and we at Plan Philly we do a lot of peer-to-peer teaching, and we believe, like you were saying, that every child has skill, has talent, and can really reach their full potential. My colleague Elise recently started a White Gloves Choir for kids with special needs, and so we are committed to bringing in children of all levels. So a question would be, in your classroom, if you do have children of many different levels, not just ages, but working at different paces, how would you address that if, for example, in a lesson there were some kids that were much further along than others, some kids having trouble with sort of basic techniques? What would be your...
Sure. I would probably, I've done this in the past, is encourage them to, to join in the sort of the teaching effort, if they're comfortable with it, and if I think that they can do so without, maybe holding it over the other kids, that they're smarter or better or anything like that. I'd encourage them to help, to use that, that knowledge, that skill that they have, to help one of their peers. I think you mentioned peer-to-peer, I think what you said.
Yeah, peer-to-peer teaching.
Teaching, exactly. And as far as children with special needs, I've also had some experience with autistic children, nothing too severe that I've experienced, but they need a little extra attention, and I love to give it to them. I don't mind ever taking a little extra time outside of class or before or after, or what have you, to sit with them and make sure that they're right there with us.
Peer-to-peer teaching is something that I can say as a staff member we do often here at Plan Philly. Another thing that we also do among the staff is, peer-to-peer mentoring when it comes to teaching. And so I'm just curious as to what you would like to find in the staff members and the teachers here at Plan Philly that you would hold a value or importance in helping you grow as a teacher.
Mm-hmm. Well, sort of touching back on my own values in the classroom, I think that integrity and trust and all of that come into play. I would hope that, and I'm sure that you guys all are people that could be trusted in a situation, and I wouldn't be nervous to talk about something that maybe makes me feel vulnerable or unsure, and just to hope that we would all be able to support each other, and where I'm lacking, someone else can make up for that and help me grow in that way. And the same on the other end. If I have a special skill, I can help use that to help my colleagues.
I can say as a staff member that people are very willing to do that here, and I found it very helpful for myself as well. So.
I'm just curious, what attracts you to the Play on Philly project as opposed to joining a community music school and renting a studio and offering lessons?
Sure. I've discovered in my short life, relatively short life, I've had lots of different jobs. They're not all on my resume because they're not all very important. I worked at Starbucks, I worked at a retail clothing store, and I've learned, maybe the hard way, that I need to be in a job that is making a difference somehow, that's positively impacting people's lives. Otherwise, I'm completely unfulfilled. I mentioned retail. I worked in a clothing store and hated it. I left drained every day. It was not rewarding at all, and it's because I was helping people, but I was helping them buy expensive suits. I wasn't enriching anyone's life, and working with children, I think, is especially important because they are, sort of cliche, but they are the future, and it's really important to invest in that. And I could work in a community school or have my own private voice studio, and I may do those things as well, because that's also important, I think, to use my training and my skills and be able to do it in that way. But I think working with children is very important to me. Well, I know working with children is very important to me.
It's near and dear to your heart.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Excellent.
And when you were a child growing up studying music, what kind of pedagogical influences did you have with either methods or
teachers when I was in a community kids choir in Aptos. She used a lot of solfege, which I've come to work into my own teaching a lot, because it was a tool that really, really helped me. And going on into college, it was also really driven into me. So I think that's probably the biggest, pedagogical, technical tool that I've taken away with me and continue to really use, as well as just really positive attitude and making things fun and everything with kids. Those are also very important as well, and things that I was taught. So.
As a teaching artist, we tend to, there could be a problem in the classroom that arises. Can you just give us an example of an issue that you've run into the past, whether it be a child or a parent, a conflict, and how you've handled that?
Sure. Well, in my current position, I work as an RA at NEC's Residence Hall. So these children are a little older, but you would be surprised. A lot of them still act like children. But every week, me, along with the other staff, we take turns being on duty, which means that after hours we have a phone that we hold in case of an emergency. We get called. And there are some really interesting conflicts that arise between these students, and I can't really go into too much detail because it's confidential with them. But there was an instance recently with a set of stolen keys that were stolen out of a student's door while she was in her room. She left her keys in her door, and the culprit, and there really isn't any other culprit, denied it, and it's still sort of in process of trying to resolve the problem. But because the student left her keys in her door, it was her fault. Of course, the person shouldn't have stolen them that stole them, but I had to sort of break that to her. This is horrible that this happened, but this is your fault, and you need to take responsibility for that. So she's had to pay all the charges to have her room rekeyed and everything. So that was tricky for me because she is my peer, but I'm her RA, so there's that tricky balance. So that's the most recent thing that's come up.
Have you found as an RA that you've been able to really figure out that balance, or is that something that you've kind of struggled with?
It has been a slight challenge. I recently had my evaluations with my supervisor and my boss, and that was the one area that I sort of was a little lower than I feel I should be. Because I like to be at 5 all the way across the board. And that one came in as a 4, which was sort of disappointing to me. But it is hard for me sometimes to balance. I think especially with peers, people that are in the same age group as me. It's hard to balance friend versus RA, that position. I take things a little too personally, or I have taken things a little too personally, and found it hard to find that balance sometimes. But with children, it's not like that at all. I'm bigger than them.
You're not too low to the ground.
Going back to your story about the recent conflict in the dorm room, and understanding that your friend and colleague and resident left their key in the doorknob, et cetera, how do you plan going forward to reestablishing trust in that living space?
It's difficult. It
Yeah.
definitely is. Thankfully, the 2 students had a pre-existing, very amicable relationship. I even say friendship.
Right.
And things seem to be okay. I definitely, it's not my trust that was broken.
Right,
It was between the 2 of them. But just really encourage them to be kind to each other. And actually, every month we have bulletin boards on the floors that we update. And February, the cliche things to go with Valentine's Day and love. And so I'm actually going to do a bulletin board on friendship and how friendship can benefit, all these health benefits that come, mental and everything, and even physical benefits, having a friend to go to the gym with, stuff like that. And it seems sort of juvenile and trivial to spell that all out for these students, but
Super important.
it's super important, and I think at this time it's really appropriate because we need a little bit more friendship on
Yeah,
our floor.
Regardless of how big or little the kids are.
Exactly.